World Crisis Radio. So here we have the New York Daily News. Gonna be hell on rails. Fire knocks out the Long Island Railroad. Delays may burn more travelers. Tuesday, August 24th. It turns out that this is an electrical connection, a piece of equipment installed in the Long Island Railroad Jamaica-Queens hub, the centerpiece of a whole system there on Long Island. The pivotal point, 10 lines coming from Long Island converge in the direction of Manhattan heading to Penn Station. And the key part, installed in 1913. That's the equipment that was burned 97 years ago. This is typical of the United States right now. This is why you've got to rebuild your infrastructure. There's just no two ways about it. Force the Federal Reserve to make available 0% federal credit and get an authority going, right? Port of Authority can take this over. Metropolitan Transportation Authority, there it is, the MTA. They own the Long Island Railroad. Let them borrow money, essentially 0% or as close to it as you can. 0.25%, 0.5% will also do, and start rebuilding this stuff, right? We found some years ago that the timetable on the Long Island Railroad indicates that it takes longer to go from one end of Long Island to another now than it did in the late 19th century or the early 20th century. And, of course, on these days you had absolute chaos at Penn Station, people stranded for hours, people stranded in Jamaica. This is just awful. So free market, not going to do the job. Now, when you look now at the Tea Party, we're looking at Glenn Beck coming to town tomorrow. That's tomorrow being Saturday, let's see what it is. It's the 28th of August that he's coming. So we got Glenn Beck and Palin at the Lincoln Memorial. And, these are Pied Pipers. The effect here is to take a bunch of people who started off maybe a year ago with some kind of existential rebellion against the horrors of Obama. They're leading them back to the equal or greater horrors of the reactionary Republicans. This is now Dick Armey and the rest of them, Richard Mellon Scaife. And what I think you have to compare this to is then look at the 1930s. You will see that then as now, you have these reactionary businessmen who like to operate behind the scenes, and they do this with significant money. And their arguments are that any government intervention in economic life is unconstitutional. This is a completely crazy theory because from the very beginning we have the possibility of protective tariffs, and from 1861 on we had protective tariffs, and we had even the tariff of abominations, the one that got Calhoun so worked up in the 1830s, right? The nullification ordinance. You can't do that. Even Andrew Jackson, bad as he was, knew that. So there's no American tradition of free market. What you have is the Hamiltonian Bank of the United States, number one. Then you have the Henry Clay II Bank of the United States. Then you have that horrible interlude where you drift towards civil war and into civil war, right, from 1836 until 1860, a horrible quarter century. And then you have a very strong protective tariff under the Lincoln Republicans, and that keeps you going all the way into the 1930s and the 1940s. The reactionary businessman says no. Henry Clay's American system is based on 3 points, and they're all constitutional. This is exactly what the Constitution mandates with the General Welfare Clause. It is a national bank that also controls a currency. That's number one. Number two is a protective tariff, so you can industrialize. And the third point is internal improvements at public expense, even if they're only in one state. What's the difference? If it's of national interest, right? New Orleans may be in one state only, but the national interest, right, all those states that are upstream in the whole country, requires that where the Mississippi River meets the world ocean, there's got to be a highly developed port. Same thing for Galveston, right? Same thing for New York City, San Francisco, all the rest of it. Those are of national interest. So again, the Henry Clay American system, protective tariff, national bank, national currency, and public improvements, infrastructure, we would call it today, internal improvements at public expense. The reactionaries of the 19th century said, no, we don't want to pay for that. We don't care about the nation. We want to rip people off. It used to be, as we've heard before, that the rich, the argument was you can't tax the rich because they're morally superior. They're rich because they're better than you. They got their money by being thrifty and prudent, unlike you, and you're profligate, and that's why you're poor, and that's why you're unemployed. This stuff used to make people laugh. Unfortunately, it's coming back today, thanks to the Tea Party, thanks to the Angles and the rest of them. In the 1930s, what did we have? The Wall Street group hated Franklin D. Roosevelt, and therefore they came forward with the Morgan coup. This is J.P. Morgan attempting to fund a Mussolini march on Rome in the form of a march on Washington. And this was done with big money from Wall Street. It failed because Smedley Butler and some others said no, and it probably would have failed anyway because it didn't have popular support. Look at this thing called the Liberty League, the American Liberty League, the Roosevelt-hating, pro-Mussolini, and ultimately pro-Hitler group. Right? This is what attracted Charles Lindbergh. It's what attracted, a faction of the DuPont family were interested in this. And then you have the Foundation for Economic Education, FEE, the National Association of Manufacturing. And then you had the Pew family, right, the ones that you hear on National Public Radio, today operating under center-left cover. The Pew family funded the Sentinels of the Republic, which was a fascist group. Isn't that interesting, that they would be fascists, quite, Mussolini parody, and at the same time call themselves the Sentinels for the Republic. And the silver shirts, right? We had them too, right? Not just the brown shirts, the black shirts, and the other shirts, but the silver shirts. These were, in effect, the AstroTurf of the 1930s. And the thing about them is that they had limited success, and I think that's quite interesting. Limited success in the 1930s, but if you look then at the Tea Party of today, it has not a great success, but it has somewhat more success, or it has had, because of the greater duplicity and refinement of the techniques on the one side, but also, I'm afraid, is because we've got a lot more confusion in the population due to the fact that industrial productive employment has declined, and we have too many stockbrokers, too many real estate brokers, too many lawyers. We have too many service jobs in the economy that are not productive and which tend to create a certain mentality in the people who do these jobs that somehow they have a right to a piece of the action, and they've got to defend that against somebody who's destitute. At least that's how they see it. That's not really the issue. That's not really how it's posed. You see the work of Freedom Works with Dick Armey, the Heartland Institute, Richard Mellon Scaife and his Competitive Enterprise Institute. We would also call attention the Mount Pelerin Society of 1947, attended by Milton Friedman, von Hayek, and von Mises, which brought together the right-wing CIA of William Buckley, the titled feudal aristocrats of the European continent. Otto von Habsburg's forces were certainly there, and others. And this created this modern conservative libertarian movement as an option. And we're just hearing now about the Koch brothers, written Koch, K-O-C-H, the Koch or Koch brothers, and all the money that they've poured in to the Cato Institute of the Libertarians and now also into the Tea Party. We'll be back in a minute.